If your only motive for reading The Color of Water by James McBride is to answer the question, what color really is water, then you might want to skip this book. However, if you are interested in a wonderful, detailed description of a black man growing up with a white Jewish mother, and all the hardships and adversities that came with that, but everything that he learned from that, then this book is for you. This novel follows not one, but two protagonists, James McBride being the author of this piece and the narrator of the story, but also his mother Ruth. Ruth came to America as a young girl, being a Polish-Jewish immigrant, and grew up in the city of Suffolk, Virginia. James was born and raised in New York City. Ruth's Virginia backstory ties into the theme of the novel because she was exposed to racism at a very early age, to the point where her abusive father and the rest of her family even disowned her. She packed up and moved to New York City, where she met a man named Dennis, who was also African American and was the father of James, who wrote this novel. He fell victim to lung cancer and died right before James was born. James eventually ends up spending time with other African Americans and learning about their background, culture, and racial identity. For example, he goes and works in Louisville, Kentucky, where his sister lives, and he learns a lot from the men he's working with there. Eventually, he returns to his mother's hometown of Suffolk, Virginia, and discovers that where their former family store was is just a McDonald's, and everything that kind of happened there is in the past, and he can't really find out any information about his mother or his family, and he's forced to sort of let that aspect of his identity go and just accept the fact that his mother is who he is, and he'll never really understand her background. Let's get analyzing. So for our first piece to sort of crack open, we're going to be looking at a page towards the end of the book where religion is discussed between Ruth and her husband Dennis back when he was alive. Religion is explored in this excerpt through Ruth's conversion. In this passage, she is talking to Dennis about it, and he asks if she's sure she wants to convert. She's totally sure. She provides some imagery of her stepping into the aisle and walking to the front of the church, shaking hands with the deacons as she is accepted into the church. And an interesting sentence that I picked out was, "I accepted Jesus that day, and he has never let me down from that day to this," because so much has gone on in Ruth's life with loss of multiple husbands that to say that Jesus has never let her down shows her true, undying faith in the church that she has accepted. Towards the end of this piece, Ruth believes herself to be living in sin because she is living with this man Dennis, and they are both members of the church, but they are not married, and she fully accepts the church's rules and tells him that they must get married. The second passage I'm analyzing here comes from towards the beginning of the novel, right around the first 50 pages. James sees his mother crying in church and asks her why she is crying, and she says that it's because God makes her happy, but he notices that there is pain in her eyes, and you can tell that in church, this ties in with the theme of religion, that in church she is accepting that Jesus will handle her issues with loss and raising these 12 children that she's been left with. Also, in this passage, this is where the book gets its title from. James asks Ruth what color God is because he sees that his mother is the only white woman in a black church. Ruth replies that God is the color of water, and water doesn't have a color. I thought that was interesting because water is something that all human beings need to survive, and it could be symbolic in this passage, Ruth saying that human beings need God by their side to survive, and that God loves all people, and that he's a colorless spirit. And this is her way of describing her religion to an innocent child. Also, towards the end of the passage, James's brother Richie gets very involved in jazz music, which I thought could be another theme of race in the book, because jazz is a traditionally black form of music. But the real important part in this piece comes with God is the color of water. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of identity, self-reliance, religion, and many other themes expressed in this novel. I cannot recommend this book enough. This book has the power to change the way you look at pretty much everything. It's an incredibly moving read, and anyone who likes to read, I'd recommend this book to. Even if you don't like to read, make an exception for this one.